Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're watching and listening from. My name is Makwa Danladi. I'm from Plateau State in Nigeria. I serve as a volunteer in the contextual discipleship of our Christian Aid Ministries ACAM in Jos Plateau State. For some years now, I've had the joy and pain of working with churches and communities facing violence. Today, I'm happy to share with you insight from the study I carried out on faith and suffering, a lived experience of persecuted Christians in northern Nigeria. This research was part of the OMSC online certificate in Lived Theology and World Christianity at the Princeton Theological Seminary in the United States. It's been such a blessing learning with them. Today, I will share insight from the qualitative study I carried out on how ordinary Christians in northern Nigeria interpret and live out their faith amid ongoing violence and persecution. The study is grounded in lived experience of believers in the Northwest, Northeast, and North Central zones, including the Middle Belt regions of Plateau, Benue, and Kaduna. It emerges directly from my volunteer service with our Christian Aid Ministries ACAM in Jos Plateau State. Background of the study. Northern Nigeria has deep historical and ethno-religious roots of violence that continues to affect Christian communities. The community faced repeated attacks, church destruction, abductions, killings, and displacement, especially in rural farming settlements. Nigerian scholars and church leaders have provided important insight into these dynamics. Dr. Ibrahim Bitrus 2026 offers a theological call for non-violence, resistance, and a theology of the cross. Bishop Wilfred Chekwa Anabe has documented patterns of violence in Benue State, describing them as potentially genocidal in his 2025 testimony before the U.S. House Committee. Father Stan Chin Elo 2025 examined internal tension in the Nigerian church, while scholars like Bishop Matthew Hudson Koka and Yakubu Tonko Jakada 2020 trace the history of Christianity under sustained pressure in the region. Violence remained intense in 2025 and into 2026, with attacks on Christian communities in Plateau, Benue, and Kaduna, often during Holy Week, Palm Sunday, and Easter periods. Fulani militant groups and other actors are frequently linked to raids on farming communities. Despite some government responses, impunity remains a major issue. This study listened closely to everyday faith experience of ordinary believers against this backdrop. Statements of the problem. Despite remarkable resilience, ongoing persecution creates profound challenges at the intersection of faith and suffering. Believers face disrupted worship, destroyed homes and livelihood, displacement and deep trauma. Attacks often target significant Christian citizens, intensifying feelings of vulnerability. The central problem is the limited understanding of how ordinary Nigerian Christians, especially widows, youths, and displaced persons, interpret and live out their faith amid violence. How do they understand God's role in suffering? How do they sustain hope? How do they view advocacy effort, and what strategy helps them resist despair and rebuild? While scholarly and pastoral response exist, these voices centers the voices and narratives of the believers themselves. Methodology. This is a qualitative interpretive study, a lived theology framework, and empirical theology from above that values the narrative, practices, and meaning-making of ordinary believers. I use a purposive sampling to select 6 adults, Christians, with direct or communal experience from persecution or displaced from ACAM-linked networks in Plateau, Benue, and Kaduna. Diversity in age, gender, denomination, and status were prioritized. The small sampling allowed for rich and in-depth exploration. Data came from semi-structured, in-depth interview conducted in safe venues using trauma-informed practice. Interviews were audio recorded with consent. As a Nigerian Christian researcher based in Jos and actively serving with ACAM, Shalom Trauma Center, discipleship training, and other ministries, I brought an insider perspective while maintaining reflexivity through journaling, member checking, and local assistance. Reflective thematic analysis was applied. and the full ethical measures including informed consent, safety protocols, and referral pathways were followed. My findings. The study revealed 4 interconnected themes. 1. The nature and effects of persecution. Participants describe a combination of violence, land occupation, church attacks, and displacement, often during famine season and worship times. This brought grief, economic hardship, and spiritual questioning. Yet they rejected seeing themselves only as victims, instead placing their experience within a large story of faithfulness. 2. Understanding of God's theology of suffering. A dominant theme was reinterpreted, suffering through Christ's cross and God's presence. Participants spoke of God as present in the pain, weeping with us, and preparing a great testimony. This drew on biblical laments, perseverance, and redemptive suffering. One participant said, "When they burn our homes, we remember Jesus had no place to lay his head." He understands suffering is actively interpreted through psychological frameworks rather than giving easy answers. 3. View on advocacy efforts. Participants appreciated local church and ACAM initiatives, trauma care, relief, discipleship training, and prayers to peace efforts for immediate practical and spiritual support. International attention brought hope, but was sometimes seen as distant or short-lived. They stressed the need for advocacy that honors local agency and promotes non-violent resistance. 4. Strategy for endurance and hope. Spiritual practice such as communal prayers, scripture meditations, worship despite fear, and discipleship gatherings were essential. Communal solidarity, caring for widows and orphans, persecution preparedness training, and farming in safety also helped. Hope was tied to eschatological assurance, this world is not our home, and small sign of God's faithfulness. In conclusion, overall, the finding shows a resilient, lived theology in which suffering is integrated into an active relationship with a suffering yet victorious God. Faith practice became active resistance and weakness, strengthening communal bond and informing ACAM ministries. Ordinary believers in northern Nigeria are active theologians. Their voices enrich world Christianity and provide grounded insight for more effective, holistic, and support for persecuted churches. This study contributes to practical theology by demonstrating how lived faith generates contextually grounded resilience that can inform both locally and globally Christian discourse. Finally, I want to express my deep appreciation to Pristine Theological Seminary and the OMST Online Certificate in Lived Theology and World Christianity for the wonderful learning experience and the privilege of studying with such a thoughtful global community. Thank you for working with me in this journal. I invite you to keep praying with us and stand with the churches in Nigeria. Thank you for watching and listening. God bless you.